Macro definition. Again, this is one of the more complicated parts of the controller, so we'll come back to it. But what it is, it's basically a name substitution. And if you have a CB6000 and it has a network connectivity over to another network device, it's not going to send a COM command, natively. It's going to send what we call a net command. It's going to send a command to an IP address. And that IP address is basically going to relay that command to the projector. And the reason for a macro definition is, let's say that you have classroom number 1, and it has an IP address of 10.10.10.10. And you build 14 of these network commands with that IP address, and you load up the file in classroom number 1, and classroom number 1 works just fine. You go to classroom number 2 and you load that file, all those commands are pointing to the wrong IP address because they're pointing to the IP address of the other room. So what we do is we allow you to put a name inside the command, so you only have to change the IP address once in a file. It is a problem that's kind of unique to networks, because we have to know where the target device is. We have to know the IP address, but sometimes there's some clever ways around making it easier for people, and this is one. An example. I'm going to call my macro CM3000, okay? And then under CM3000, I'm going to put an I, because we always put an I at the beginning of our IP number. I'm going to put 10.10.10.10, okay? Let me hit save. Now, what this is doing is anytime I use the name CM3000 in a command, it's going to refer to this field and substitute the IP address. So let's say I have 14 commands in my database of commands. They're all going to go to this IP address. Now when I take this file and I load it into classroom number 2, I go to the macro address and I simply change that to 11. That way, anytime I use this name, it's going to IP address number 11. Now I can have different names, but typically in K-12 in the classroom, even though you have 16 macro names, in a typical installation you'll probably just use one. Even though we allow for more, there might be some situations where you have more than one IP address in a room. You might have maybe the projectors on the network and audio amplifiers on the network. In that case, you would have 2 macro names, and the next one might be called projector. So in this case, anytime I use the word CM3000, it's going to steer towards that IP address. Anytime I use the word PROJ, it's going to steer towards that address. And this is just simply to make your life easier. When you have 50 classrooms, you don't want to go in and change the IP address of every single command. So you use the name when it's built into the command.